Hello, sixth graders. Today I've asked you in your daily assignment to work on division with integers. Before we broke for our April vacation, we had covered addition, subtraction, and multiplication of integers. And as far as multiplication and division, I think I previewed that for you as we were struggling through addition and subtraction, which can be somewhat challenging, especially subtraction. I said to you, when we get to multiplication and division, it will be very simple. Please commit this rule to memory. If you're multiplying or dividing any two numbers, if the signs are the same, the answer is positive, and if the signs are different, the answer is negative. So just a quick review of multiplication. 6 times 7 is 42, and right underneath, notice I've drawn a line down the middle of the board. Along with 6 times 7, I put negative 6 times negative 7 because that is also 42. And of course, if we don't specify a sign, it's positive. You don't have to say positive 42. You don't have to put a plus sign in front of it. You just say that it's 42. All right? On the other side, we have the two examples where the signs are different. Negative times positive or positive times negative. Here, the rule says that the answer is negative, so we get negative 42. Negative 42. Quite simple. Now, going forward, as a practical matter, you're just going to be entirely used to this. It's going to become part of your long-term memory, and you will do it automatically. But I hope that you appreciated and understood the reason behind these rules from previous videos. It has to do with the fact that when you multiply a number by -1, it's equivalent to taking its opposite. So just a quick review with, let's take this one. I could actually apply a similar rule to any of the three that involve negative numbers, but let's just review why -6 times -7 is positive 42. Well, -6 is equivalent to -1 times 6. I provided you a proof that when you multiply a number by -1, you get its opposite. So -6 is equivalent to -1 times 6. And -7 is equivalent to -1 times 7. So you're not going to do this mentally, but just as a matter of buying into and agreeing with these rules, not because I told them to, but because they make sense. We have four numbers here. -1 times 6 times -1 times -7. Let's rearrange them. The associative and commutative properties of multiplication allow us to do this. We can think of this as -1 times -1 times 6 times 7. Now, 6 times 7, of course, is 42. And -1 times -1 is 1. So we have 1 times 42 or 42. According to the rule, that's what we knew it was. Just a quick reminder, this -1 times -1, you can understand that to be 1 really for kind of two reasons. Think of this as you're multiplying this -1 by -1. When you multiply any number by -1, you get its opposite. So when you multiply this -1 by -1, you get the opposite of that -1, which is 1. Or I also provided you a proof of the very specific case that -1 times -1 is positive 1. So this is a review of multiplication. And the good news is that with division, the rule is exactly the same as multiplication. Same signs positive, different signs negative. I'm going to provide you some examples of those divisions, and you should be good to go. I thought it would make sense to look at these four divisions, and notice I've used the middle school preferred way of representing a division. There's nothing wrong with that division sign you learned in 3rd grade, the line with the dot on the top and the bottom, but as you go forward in math, middle school into high school, generally we're going to represent a division as a fraction, which you know is the case. I thought it would be nice to look at 42 divided by 6, based on what we did in the multiplications a few seconds ago. 42 divided by 6, of course, is 7. And the reason for that is, of course, because 7 is the number that you multiply 6 by to get 42. We're going to use the definition of division together with the rule for multiplication as to the signs to determine what the sign is. Now, the rule allows you to do it very simply. Here, once again, on the left side, the signs are the same. On the right side, the signs are different. When the signs are the same, for multiplication and division, the answer is positive. So this is also positive 7. But let's sort of ask why. Okay, what, this question mark, what do you multiply negative 6 by to get negative 42? Now think about that. The number you multiply negative 6 by to get negative 42 is positive 7, right? 7 times negative 6 is negative 42. So that rule for multiplication produces the rule for division, which is really the same rule, but you can prove that the rule is appropriate for division according to the definition of division. 7 times negative 6 is negative 42, so 7 has to be the quotient. It has to be the answer to that division. And in a similar way over here, now we move to the right side where the signs are different, right? And when the signs are different, the answer is negative. But in terms of the definition of division, what do you multiply 6 by to get negative 42? Well, that has to be negative 7, right? Negative 7 times 6 is negative 42. And you don't have to really go through that thought process. You're just going to look and say, okay, the signs are different, so the answer is negative. And in a similar way here, we're being asked, what do you multiply negative 6 by to get positive 42? Okay, I'll write this one out like this. Could have done this with the others, but okay. What? We're looking for the result of this division. Whatever it is, you have to be able to multiply negative 6 by that quotient in order to get positive 42. Well, we've got negative 6, so this has to be negative. Negative times negative to give you the positive 42, right? And again, these explanations, the explanations I gave you for multiplication a while ago, and now sort of fitting it into the division situation, it's important to follow these explanations so that math for you is something that makes sense. It all fits together. It's a consistent story, and it's not just something you have to memorize because Mr. LaBeouf told you. No, you make the story work for yourself, and I try to guide you along in that way. But let's face it, there are going to be situations in your math lives going forward where you just have to get a right answer, or some of these things are going to be part of much bigger problems, solving equations, and you do need to get to the point where you don't really have to think about it and you just apply the rules. So to repeat, for multiplication and division of two numbers, if the signs are the same, then the answer is positive. Sometimes I erase my own work here. Here we had two positives, here we had two negatives. In this case, the signs were the same, so the answer was positive. And over here we had a negative and a positive, one of each. The signs were different, so the answer was negative. Multiplication and division of numbers which have signs is very simple. Please enjoy putting together the story of math for yourself, and I'll see you soon.